Hi, welcome back to the Middle East video blog. My name's Jay.
I'm MEVB, and today it's our third episode, and we're going to be talking about Afghanistan. It seems like there's been a lot of talk about the Middle East lately, but not so much about Afghanistan, the forgotten war, as we would call it. So we're going to be talking about that today. This is especially important because of the deal that the United States, NATO, and Afghanistan has been trying to reach lately, and they're having another meeting tomorrow. The NATO allies, including Secretary Kerry from the United States, is going to be meeting with the foreign minister, the acting foreign minister, and the interior minister of Afghanistan to make sure that they can reach a deal about what's going to happen after withdrawal of all the troops the troops in 2014. So we think it's timely, and we should be talking about this now because most people are sick about talking about Iran.
Right, so if you hear the phrase the deal and the Middle East, you're probably going to think about Iran and the nuclear deal. That's not what we're talking about this episode. What we're going to be dealing with is the agreement and what to do with the American troops, because originally everyone agreed that American and NATO troops would leave Afghanistan at the end of 2014. That's rapidly approaching, but as we all know, the situation in Afghanistan is not exactly stable. So before we get into the specifics of the deal, let's talk a little bit about some background regarding the situation in Afghanistan.
Yeah, let's remember what we were saying to each other and what was happening back in 2001 when Bush decided that the United States should enter Afghanistan. Here we go. There's a clip we have.
Explosions over Kabul, over Kandahar, over Jalalabad. The call to arms from the US Commander-in-Chief in the treaty room at the White House.
The battle is now joined on many fronts. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail.
15 bombers, including B-2s, on a round trip from an airbase in Missouri, 25 strike aircraft, and Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from warships and submarines in the Arabian Sea.
We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds.
2 hours after the first wave of airstrikes, C-17 aircraft began dropping thousands of emergency food rations, medicine and leaflets explaining the purpose of the airstrikes.
To say that these attacks are in any way against Afghanistan or the Afghan people is flat wrong.
So we remember that it was essentially to topple the Taliban regime and to promote democracy, to have nation building, and to basically have a civilized country for the Afghan people.
Essentially, America decided that we were going to blame the Taliban for hosting Al-Qaeda, who orchestrated the 9/11 attacks, and so in retaliation for 9/11...
Which they did.
Exactly, which they did. So in retaliation for 9/11, we were going to topple the Taliban regime, but obviously it would be unfair to the Afghan people to just remove their government and leave. Instead, we removed their government and then engaged in what was frequently called nation building, and we're still working at it. It's tough work, this thing called nation building.
It has been almost 12 years since the Allied forces have entered Afghanistan and have been since trying to do this nation building. So 12 years later, here we are. It's 2014. Obama had promised many times that he wanted to get the troops out of there by the end of 2014. This is agreed on by every side in this little situation here, and now they're trying to reach this deal on how to deal with this after 2014, because the NATO allies agree that they cannot pull out all the troops, that there needs to be some force there, and most Afghanis would actually agree with that. But let's see why they're trying to reach this. Here's Obama's explanation of this deal, the so-called deal that's going on right now.
We are going to end combat operations in Afghanistan at the end of 2014. What I've said is that if, in fact, the Afghan government is interested and willing to work with us in a cooperative way that protects our troops and other coalition partners, we would consider a train and advise mission that would extend beyond 2014, greatly reduced from what we're doing now.
But the whole reason for this episode is that the deal is not exactly easy to achieve. while obviously the Council of Elders in Afghanistan, an important legislative body, they've tentatively agreed to the deal, which would keep American security forces in Afghanistan to help train local police and the national military in their continued fight against the Taliban and other national security threats in Afghanistan. While the Council of Elders has agreed, President Karzai is not so sure. He's initially indicated that he's not going to sign this agreement, that he's going to leave it to the next president. Those elections will be held this coming April, which kind of surprised a lot of people. They figured that US-Afghanistan security cooperation is a no-brainer. Why is Karzai deciding to, wash his hands of this whole cooperation?
And this deal was pretty much agreed on, in orally, but now they're refusing. Now he's refusing to sign it. So let's see his remarks on this.
An assembly of Afghan elders are ready to make a deal with the U.S. The assembly, known as the Loya Jirga, voted in favor of a security deal to allow U.S. troops to remain in the country past next year. Now it's up to President Hamid Karzai to sign the pact into law. Karzai, however, appeared uncertain in his final remarks.
While we're ready to give bases for Americans on our soil, we have a condition concerning security. Security from today onwards means from now on, American forces are banned from launching operations on Afghan houses.
Karzai earlier said he would not sign until after a presidential election due next April.
So in response to President Karzai's hesitation, America also responded, and essentially threatening is kind of a strong word, but they are seriously considering, at least rhetorically, the option of what they say is the zero option of pulling out all of American and NATO troops. And NATO has essentially agreed to do what America decides to do. So if America pulls out all the troops, then NATO will pull out all the troops. Because America doesn't really like this rhetoric from Karzai basically saying that this agreement is somehow not in Afghanistan's interests. America really wants Afghanistan to be on board with this because it's important for popular relations concerns, for public affairs concerns. It's important that Afghanistan and the president of the country be supportive of America's continued role and NATO's continued role in maintaining the security of the Afghanistan nation.
I want to clarify now that with the deal, the troops that are going to be staying, so the amount of soldiers on the ground that are not Afghan, that are American and NATO, is going to be, they're considering between 8,000 and 12,000 soldiers. Of this, a maximum of 8,000 will be American, and the rest will be from the Allied forces. And so they don't want to be engaged in this if the United States is not. So essentially the deal is really up to Afghanistan. And so the U.S. is using this zero option rhetoric to make sure, listen, either you're on board and we have this security engagement and you allow us to operate the way we do for your security and ours, or we're pulling all the troops.
Morning, Kate. Hamid Karzai has a long history of drama with the U.S., and it looks like this time he's going all in. Karzai telling the National Security Advisor, Susan Rice, in Kabul, that he will not sign this agreement to keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan after 2014. He's setting two conditions, new conditions right now. One is the release of all Afghan detainees from Guantanamo Bay. One of the other conditions he's now setting is no U.S. entry, no U.S. raids into Afghan homes.
But it's not like they've only been raiding civilian houses. They've also been rather successfully targeting, isolating, and eliminating Taliban threats and other sort of extremist terrorist elements in the country.
Yeah, so let's talk about Afghanistan today. I mean, it's been almost 12 years since this invasion began. What has the West achieved? What have they not? What is Afghanistan's situation today?
Because I think a popular argument is like, oh, why are we even there? This is the next Vietnam. We're doing no good. We're only doing harm. Well, it's important to remember. Go back just a couple of minutes ago.
Have we achieved anything, Jay?
I definitely think we've achieved something. I mean, we didn't get rid of the Taliban because the insurgency is still there, but hey, we toppled that government and we eliminated the threat that Afghanistan could be used as a host country to plan large-scale international terrorism operations. We accomplished that initial goal.
Yeah, well, the initial goal was achieved, and there have been elections in Afghanistan. I mean, technically, there is a government, so these are quite.
Let's not forget that the Taliban's only crime is not simply allowing Al Qaeda to plan 9/11. Think about the oppressive regime and how it was terrible for women and little girls couldn't even go to school. This was an oppressive regime that was harming its own people.
Yeah.
And by eliminating that regime, individual freedoms have the increasing opportunity to affect more and more everyday Afghan civilians.
I like that word opportunity, because even though there's been a lot of criticism against the United States saying that, you guys went into Afghanistan saying we want to make sure women have rights, like all these things that Taliban is doing, we're going to reverse them. And not all of them have come true, but we have to remember that it's a long process. And like you said, the opportunity is much more available right now than it was 12 years ago.
Right. Obviously, not all of Afghanistan is secure. The insurgency and the Taliban still limit the ability of freedom to spread in Afghanistan. But obviously, in areas that are secure, where there is no immediate threat of terrorism or Taliban insurgency, women have more rights. All children are allowed to get an education. The economy is allowed to get back jump-started. I think we can all agree that in areas where the Taliban is prevented from occupying, Afghanistan is better off. The question is, how do we move forward, and how do we further limit the Taliban insurgency? Because it seems like we're kind of at a stalemate right now.
Yeah, and that brings us to some of the limits of what the Allied forces have been able to accomplish, right? So today,